One decision, one accusation, one headline. Sometimes that's all it takes for the world to believe they know your story. But what happens when the story everyone believes isn't the truth? Today's guest knows what it's like to lose years to injustice. She also knows what it takes to rebuild not just a life, but an identity. Today isn't simply about surviving one of life's darkest chapters. It's about reclaiming your voice, rewriting your future, and refusing to let the past become your permanent introduction. Welcome to PlanetRoq.
Welcome to the PlanetRoq podcast, the hottest show in the cosmos. Get ready for insight and inspiration right here on PlanetRoq with your special guest, Starling Thomas, and your cosmic guide through our ever-changing space and time. I'm your host, Raquel Herring.
Welcome to PlanetRoq, the hottest show in the cosmos. I'm Raquel Herring, your guide on this wild ride called life. Here on PlanetRoq, we believe the best conversations don't simply entertain, they transform. This is where culture meets purpose, success meets substance, and extraordinary people share lessons that help all of us grow, lead, and live with intention. Listen to PlanetRoq on envision-radio.com Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. And whether you're all joining us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or watching past episodes on YouTube at Raquel Herring, I am grateful you are here. So settle in, lean in, and let's elevate your life one conversation at a time right here on PlanetRoq. Family, today's guest is living proof that some of life's most painful chapters don't have to become the title of your story. Starling Thomas is a writer, director, brand strategist, and founder of Soldier, a multimedia production company that uses storytelling to challenge assumptions, inspire healing, and drive meaningful change. After being wrongfully incarcerated and later exonerated on appeal, she chose not to let that experience define her. Instead, she transformed it into purpose, creating films, writing stories, and advocating for justice in ways that invite people to think differently about truth, redemption, and the power of owning your own narrative. Starling, welcome to PlanetRoq.
Thank you. That was an amazing intro. I think that's the best one I've ever had. So thank you.
I'm happy to hear that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. When I heard your story, I was like, what? And then I saw some videos, and then I was even more outraged. And, I'm excited to sit with you and talk today because in this climate we're in, people need to hear this. Because as we know, everyone incarcerated is not supposed to be there. And I would like to spend time talking about the better things that's happening for you. I want to talk about the woman who refused to let it become her final chapter. Because before the headlines, before the courtroom, before the appeals, there was a woman with dreams, ambition, and a vision for her life. Please tell us, who was Starling Thomas before the world interrupted her story?
That's so amazing. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that in that way. I was a storyteller, a writer. I've been writing since I was 8 years old. I would say I was an advanced child because I was reading August Wilson and Maya Angelou. And, my mom, shout out to mom, because I would be in trouble or get on punishment. She'd be like, go write a 10-page paper or you're going to be on be grounded for 2 weeks. So although at the time I didn't like it, but it was instilling in me these gifts, helping. I call them gifts. I feel like these things that are given to us from God, that we are to share and be used for his purpose and greater good. These are gifts. And so, writing is a gift, storytelling is a gift. And then in college, I went to Florida A&M, shout out to them. HBCU, I studied journalism, and then I started doing film, and it kind of just like was able to mesh all of these gifts together. But it wasn't until I became incarcerated that I started using these gifts to elevate the things that were happening that I witnessed, and that my sisters who I was incarcerated with. And I've been impacted by the system. Like my, prison journey didn't start as an adult. My mother was beat by a cop in front of me when I was 8 years old at a doctor's office in Pantego, Texas, over medical records, because how dare a Black woman ask for her medical records because she wanted to see another doctor. And from that moment, my childhood was shattered, and the mistrust that I had for the system ran really deep. And my mother took a plea deal because they told her if she didn't, that she would be looking at 10 years away from her kids, because it was assault and battery of a police officer, even though he attacked her. And so she signed the deal, and she was put on 8 years probation. In year 7, she is about 7 months pregnant with my baby brother. And she goes to report. She doesn't have the money to pay the fees, but she says, I'm here, I'm reporting. And they lock her up anyway at year 7. She only had 1 more year left on probation. And 8 years, that's a whole nother story. 8 years is a very long time to be on probation, because that's you're still not physically incarcerated, but you're still in the system. And so she went to prison. She gave birth to my brother, handcuffed and chained to a bed. And, I was 15 at the time. My aunt, we flew to go pick up my brother because he would have been a ward of the state after 3 days. That's all they give women, for somebody to come pick up their child. And, I feel like my childhood was basically gone at that point. I became a mother to my siblings. And then also, staying in contact with my mom and hearing about all of the stories and the things that she was going through, because we didn't talk on the phone that much. Phone calls are very expensive, so we wrote a lot. And so she would write me letters about the things that she was dealing with. And so I said, if I go to college, if I get educated, if I do all the things that society says I'm supposed to do, I will not end up in prison or jail. And that's just not the case in this country. And so about 15 years after my mom's incarceration, I found myself on the other side of freedom, fighting to get out in the federal system, which, if anybody has been through the system, the feds is a whole different beast than, state, which it's already has a lot of issues. But because of what I witnessed my mother go through, I refused to sign a plea deal for something that I didn't do. They were offering me 2 years, and I read through the plea deal agreement. I had a public defender. Shout out to Jerome. He's a judge now. But I had an amazing public defender, and, he didn't push the deal on me when I told him I didn't want to sign it, because at the bottom of it, it's all these things that are not mine. Money's that's not mine. Houses are not mine. Cars are not mine. I'm talking millions of dollars, right? There's pounds of cannabis that's not mine. And then at the very bottom of the appeal, the plea deal, it says, if you sign this, you will waive all of your rights, even to appeal this conviction or these charges, however they word it. And I just couldn't do it. I said, if I'm going to go to war, and I'm not just going to sign away my rights. If I'm going to do time in prison for something I didn't do, then I'm going to fight for my freedom. And that's what I did. And the government was mad. After I declined, they superseded the indictment and hit me with 13 more counts. And I was looking at over 100 years if I was sentenced to the max on each account. And so I said, hey, I gave it to God. It was one of those times in your life when you can do nothing but give it to God. And I just surrendered, and, I said, whatever will be, will be. And I ended up losing my trial. I think it was 11 counts that I was found guilty of. 2 they dismissed, and I was immediately taken from my life. I thought that if I had the opportunity, to turn myself in. If I had lost my trial, because everyone else that was on the case had the opportunity to turn themselves in. And so I thought, I wasn't a flight risk. I'd already been on pretrial doing all of the things that they were requiring me to do. That I would get the opportunity to get my affairs in order before I turned myself in. And that was not the case. They immediately snatched me from my life, and I became, incarcerated at that moment. That's when everything in my life shifted. So, yeah. It's been a journey, but I won in the long run, in God, because I can't say that I got it on my own. I beat the feds, and I am part of the 2% of the American prison population in the federal system that wins their case on appeal. The feds have a 98% conviction rate, and they have that for a reason. And most people take deals, and that's how they get the conviction rate that they have. Even innocent people, they just want to get it done and get out as soon as they can. And the system is not designed for us to defend ourselves. It's not designed for us to even, when you go to trial, you're punished more. Even with my sentencing, the government wanted me to do 8.5 years, I believe. They ended up sentencing me to 3.5 years. And during that time, immediately my public defender at the time stayed on my case, which is a very rare thing. That's why I say that is a gift from God, because it's not typical that you have a public defender that cares and sees what's going on and wants to help you fight. And while we lost that trial, we won my appeal. 2 years later, I was being escorted off of the prison compound before they did count, because I no longer was, incarcerated. And so it took the feds about 6 months. They were trying to debate on whether or not they wanted to retry my case. And about 6 months later, I got a call that all of the 11 counts had been overturned, and they would not be, retrying the case. And so from then, the moment I got out, I knew that I was going to tell these stories. I knew that I was going to elevate the stories of my sisters. I knew that these gifts and, that all of the work that I had been doing, I always said, they took my time, but they can never take my mind. And so I looked at the 2 years as a way to just become a master of my craft. I read so many books, but I read this one book. It's like the Book of Mastery, and it talks about getting the 10,000 hours to become a master at something. And I looked at, my brain over here, overachiever, like, what can I do with these hours, this time that now I have no mortgage or rent to pay. I have no bills. I don't even get to choose what I get to wear every day, right? I'm told what to do every day, all day. So at least I can use my time and not let them take my mind. And while I was incarcerated, I wrote 6 feature scripts. I wrote 3 shorts, 2 books. So countless poems, and also taught so many classes to the women that were there on telling their story. I taught grant writing classes, all of the things. And we actually even published an anthology of about 10 incarcerated women's story while we were in prison. So I definitely did not sit idle. And when I got out of prison, a short script that I had wrote called Harvest, it won best screenplay in a film festival, and I was able to get a producer and shot that short film. And that was basically the kickoff to, I wouldn't say kickoff because I was already doing this before, but that was what got the movement into that space of filmmaking for me after incarceration.
First, I have to apologize to the Lord, because after hearing your story, of course, I knew I was being very petty at the time. But now after hearing your story, I was being extremely petty. And I got to ask God to forgive me for being petty, one. And secondly, I am so sorry that this, you hear these stories. You hear stories like yours. And you're wondering, how can a people be so ugly and so cruel to another, to want to lock them up, one, treat them badly, take away their freedom, especially over something they did not do. And to put these type of charges, this happens so many times. And I think we just become so, like, I don't know if we become callous or we just feel like we can't do anything about it. We're, or just like there's no compassion. But it's so shocking to me that how many times, especially now, we are hearing stories like yours of people who have had all these charges put on them. And I asked my mom, like, about things. Did this just start? Like, like, is it just, has it gotten worse now? Or is it that we are now hearing it so much because of social media? And I think two ways. She's like, it's gotten worse, and because we're hearing it now on social media. But this has always been happening. We talk about this on the show Point of View that I do, 7:30 on Afro TV every weeknight. And we talk about how this is historical. Mm-hmm. All the things, all the racism, all the hatred, the brutality, the callousness, all of it. This is historical. And yet so many people want to deny oh yeah, you're just making up things. You're just, people are wrong. They did wrong things. But this is not true. Mm-hmm. To put these counts on you, you had none of this. You said houses, cannabis, all this. My gosh. And so it just brings you to a place of thinking, how many other people is this happening to? What's the percentage of people who are literally innocent and those who actually should be having charges? Or maybe the charges is like unusual. What do they call that in the amendment? It's a cruel and unusual punishment, to give someone a sentence that is not like really corresponding to the crime. I mean, Black people are given sentences, lifetimes, as huge sentences for what? For nothing. And yet here you have a white person who gets way less sentencing for worse crimes. And it's just, I don't understand why that doesn't fall into cruel and unusual punishment. But we don't write the laws, right? And this is part of the problem I think we're having as well. We are not participating in writing these laws or participating in literally being able to enforce them from a place of power, right? And so I hear this and it just, I'm not trying to talk the whole interview because this is not about me, but it hurts me. It hurts me to my heart to hear that, I'm being petty and someone's going through way worse. 100,000 times worse than what I'm even complaining about. And how many times is that happening to not just me, but other people? And you're literally having to survive. You're fighting for your life. You're fighting for your freedom in a system that should be designed to treat people fairly, but it just isn't. And all of you out there who claim that it is, you're wrong. And you should really be able to understand you're wrong. And just based on history that Black people didn't write at all, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And for those who understand that it's not, that it isn't fair, well, thank you for at least understanding that it is not fair and it's not equitable. And it's sad that this is where we come to after all these years. Okay, I'm sorry. Now I'm off my soapbox.
Well, there's. I want to just mention, for the critics out there, that there's an organization called Prison Policy Initiative, and they put out all of the numbers and the statistics. And I utilize these numbers because it can't be storytelling without the numbers. That's how you show the impact. And there has been a 700% increase in women's incarceration since the 1980s. 700% increase, and it's not going down.
Oh my
gosh. And also the way that poverty is also criminalized adds to that number as well. And there's a lot of misconceptions about women who are incarcerated. And folks I get a lot of these comments that say, oh, well, don't go to jail and this won't happen to you. And that's so ignorant to think that, because it's blatantly in our face every single day, the injustices that are happening from the Supreme Court all the way down. You see, women, people being beaten by police officers left and right. You see the whole ICE situation that's going on. My heart really goes out to them. I'm reading stories about children that are in these ICE camps, and the trauma that is going to come from this, and the trauma that comes from any kind of incarceration, whether it's a week or a year or 10 years, and it's not slowing down. And what we do know, according to the numbers, that Black women go to prison and jail 2 times more than white women. And it's another comment I get as well is, well, white women are in prison too. Yes, they are, and they do get incarcerated. But I guarantee you, when you're there, you see way more of women of color than you do white women. That's just, the system. And what I've really been able to do is take this trauma and take the horrors that we go through and put them in people's faces in a way that makes them uncomfortable, gives truth, and gives ownership of our voices. Because one thing that I saw before I got out of prison is that a lot of these networks and these shows that we see, it's really exploitation of, this particular population of people, and they put them in front of a camera and they feed off of it. I think one of the ones I saw that really disturbed me was Jailbirds. It's a show that came out, and it was actually inside the facilities with people, and it was like kind of like funny and haha and like, oh, this, like, and there's nothing funny about being incarcerated. So one of the biggest things that I do is give ownership to the voices that and the stories that I tell. Even mine included. I'm the one behind the camera. I'm the one writing. I'm the one who is leading and navigating these stories. I feel like once these films come out, people are really going to see things in a different light. And obviously, these films are for my sisters, for my justice impacted sisters, but they're also going to be used as tools for legislation and advocacy and getting in front of judges and prosecutors, and these folks, lobbyists, and these people who are, the ones who have the power, right? A lot of us don't even know what the process is. I didn't. I had to learn, how does the law get put into place? Who is the one that oversees? Because even so, there's laws now that ban shackling. Like, I'm in Texas, they have the banning of shackling of pregnant women, which is still something that goes on to this day, but there's nobody overseeing it, and they still leave that up to the facility. And to me, that's always been crazy. And if you are never in the history of any woman giving birth has she ever ran, right? Unless she was escaping slavery. Yeah. And so for you to handcuff and chain a pregnant woman is detrimental. And I just recently posted a video last week out of Arizona, and a cop is brutally punching a pregnant woman. She's 9 months pregnant. She got arrested for reckless driving, which, come on now. And that you see the cop, she's in handcuffs behind her chain, and he's punching her in her head. And when they asked the cop why she did that, because she resigned, but now she's been indicted. So we'll see what happens. She has a trial later this year. But she said that she reverted to her training, that her training was what made her act in that manner and brutally punch this pregnant woman in her head multiple times.
So when she says her training, and I saw that video, when she said her training, is she saying that they're telling her that this is what you do? Or did they, like, she's a Manchurian candidate? They kind of place something in her. I mean, like.
What I took from it, it was an excuse. I actually listened. What I didn't put in the video was the full audio recording, because I did a lot of research. I always do research before I post anything. And she, I think she was coached on what to say. And that was what was told to her to say was, oh, I reverted to my training. She said, obviously that doesn't look good what you're seeing, but I just reverted back to my training and this was after she lied in the report, didn't report what had happened, that she beat this woman. None of that was in the report. And yeah, so her training. And honestly, I believe her, because that she's not the only one. This is going on for centuries.
Right.
And, that's one of the things with my film Born Captive, which is coming out later this year,
Yes.
starring the amazing Naturi Naughton-Lewis.
So she's a great actress.
She
She brings it to life. That character, she's that character in that moment. She's a
I
wonderful.
knew she would do well. I knew she would do well. And it was all God aligned. When I started working on this film, I didn't have Naturi Naughton-Lewis budget. Okay. So I was like, when it did come across that I had the opportunity, she read the script and she loved it and she thought it was super powerful. And, I knew she was going to do well because she's an amazing actress, but on set, I forgot I was directing at sometimes because I was so engulfed into her performance and the story and what I was witnessing that I knew that this film is really going to change people's perspective on what it is like to be incarcerated over for not having money, for poverty, and then also giving birth in a cell. And it's inspired by my mother's story. And Naturi also was her company Take Two Entertainment, and she also was executive producer and co-director. So it was an amazing experience to work on this film with her. But yeah, we go through the film. It follows Naomi, and it's inspired by my mother when she got incarcerated for not being able to pay her probation fees, and she goes into labor in this cell, dirty jail cell, and every time she's starting to have major contractions, we're transported into another time period where we see Black women birthing in bondage. And so we go back into an enslaved ancestor. We go back into the civil rights movement, and then we go back into the 80s, 90s, where the war on drugs was really a war on Black people. And we see the centuries of bondage that this country has had us in, and what the system has done and what it's continuing to do to women and families. And yes, men go to prison at a higher rate than we do, but it is completely different when a woman becomes incarcerated, because she is usually the pillar of her household and is the main provider for her children and her family. And so it completely detonates the family structure and causes generational trauma. And one thing for me in this work is that I'm using storytelling as a tool for healing from all of the trauma. And that's one of the feelings that I don't think money could ever replace.
Right.
Seeing that impact that it makes when somebody sees their story on screen, or when somebody gets the opportunity to tell their story for the first time, and they're in a safe space that they're comfortable with, that if they break down bawling, crying, I'm not going to say, keep the cameras rolling, get that. I'm going to stop production. And we're going to make sure that you have the mental health care and some, on set that can deal with those kind of things. And that was a learning lesson for me, because I was dealing with that, helping. But then as my career grew, I learned that there are people that have these positions that, that on set mental health coordinators, and, to have that during production. But I think I'm really excited for this film to come out. I really do feel like people are going to be amazed at, they're going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to make you want to do something. You're going to want to take action because you've just witnessed a woman bring life in captivity.
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't think I've ever seen in a film before.
My gosh. What does it look like to do something?
So in regards to birthing behind bars, there's two legislative pieces that are getting ready to go up. And again, I'm learning all of this. So I know that you can actually go to my website, borncaptive.org. I have all of the information. I'm working with two people two organizations, I should say, that are helping to get bills passed. And so basically we're saying, there's alternatives to incarceration for pregnant women, right? If there are charges that come, if if that is the case, then we need to look at how can they be on home confinement or house arrest or in something like that, so that they can still stay home, have their baby, have time to get their baby to a family member or whomever. If jail or prison has to be the absolute en route for whatever their charges are. And then also, what does dignity for incarcerated women look like? So making sure that we hold these institutions accountable to these laws once they're passed, and saying, you cannot treat incarcerated people as animals, as subjects, and I think also, and this is the change I haven't figured out how to do yet, but the training, as that officer said, her training, we need to address that. We need to look at the training across the country in jails and prisons, law enforcement, because they're being trained to treat incarcerated people as less than human. And who did they used to consider as less than human? Black people. So, I think it starts there. And these are systemic changes. Right now, my thing is, I was raising money for the film, right? That I'm an artist. That's how I give back and share. And, that's my call to action. This is what I can do. And, I feel like once the film is out, then the call to actions will change based on whatever legislation is getting ready to, go up. And that's what we'll say, hey, go to the website, sign the petition, or even I'm also working with other women to just have this storytelling bank of women who've gone through this, because there's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of women who have stories like this. Either they were pregnant and treated horribly, or they literally had their baby in a cell. And we don't hear about these stories until they sue the institution, right? So there's so many that we don't even know about. So many women have their power stripped from them, where they don't know what to do when they get out. We're in survival mode, because we're just trying to make ends meet, and survive and not go back to prison or jail. And it's really hard when, this capitalistic society that we live in criminalizes poverty and surviving.
Yeah. You talked about truth and the things that, naysayers or people, I would say that, they serve somebody different. And they come, oh, well, you should be in jail anyway, or don't go. It's something about the truth that people just hate. And we know who that is, who hates the truth more than anybody. He's the father of lies. And then, for them to have the audacity to say the things they say, it just says, it shows who you are and whose you are, that you're willing to come against the truth because you just don't like the truth. And rather than just face the truth, because it is what it is. We didn't write the textbooks about it. A lot of us didn't write the history books about it that are being read or taken out today. And yet they still don't want to accept the truth. But accepting the truth, at least at that point, you see the truth, you accept it, and then you do something about it. Because taking history out of the school systems and trying to redefine it based on now that everybody can see what the words have been there all along, and they're not accepting the perception that has been taught to them anymore. Now you give a different truth, but then you keep doing the same things. So it's like, how do you ever get away from the truth or truly just deny the truth? If you're just denying what the truth is after it keeps repeating itself over and over, there's just no truth in you.
Right.
And you can't even say that that you're Christian or whatever. At this point, you're just a lover of Satan because you don't like the truth.
Right.
And how can you change anything? But I guess most people don't want to change anything because, like you say, it's capitalistic. You turn the court systems and all of it into another form of banking.
Yep.
Where people are constantly having to fight for their life. Some can, some are their resources are drained. Some of them end up didn't have resources and have to just deal with the system that's incarcerating them, one, unfairly, or that shouldn't be doing it at all. It's so. There really are no words. I mean, there's really no words, but I'm happy to see that, you're doing something. You're bringing the stories out because people have to hear it, because there are some people that are willing to accept the truth. They just haven't really seen it the way they need to see it to impact them, right? Because everyone reaches someone differently. And we even talk about it like here on the show, the same thing. You know, some people will speak about it. Some people make movies about it. Some people, there's jobs or like the body in Christ, you know, everyone has a different purpose in that body.
Right.
And, you know, not everybody's going to be the fighter, but they're going to be the one to speak about it. Not everyone's going to, you know, go to war, but they'll be the one to make the movies so you can see and hear and have better understanding about what's going on. So thank you so much for that. I love that you call it a gift, and clearly you're excellent at storytelling, because I haven't had to ask a question yet, and you told everything, and I'm like, I don't even know if I have questions now. I still have to go over the show.
You know, as storytellers, we can talk. We just go and go and go.
I love it though. I was like, well, let me let her go. I don't have to. I love this. I want to talk about you, but I have to say back at Naturi again. Oh my gosh. And I could just imagine you watching her, because I would be this. I mean, I can imagine being in a scene with her, and she's such a great actress. You're just like, and then, you know, you have a line that comes up and you've forgotten all about that because you're so captivated.
Yeah.
You're like, what's the line? Give me the line. I don't even know. I forgot I was supposed to be doing something. I'm watching her. She's amazing.
Right. Yeah, that's how it was. I was like, oh, cut. Sorry.
I can imagine. Oh my gosh. I want to ask you, leading up to being incarcerated, and then I want to move away from this and really like talk about other things, you know, just you in general. But leading up to this, how did it even get to this point that they were bringing charges?
So, you know how, I don't know if your grandmother used to tell you, but my grandmother used to tell me, be careful who you call your friends.
Oh, my mom says it still to this day. That's right.
Well, it's very true. And I had a former friend in college. I got a call from her. I had just graduated and I was struggling. There were no jobs. I came out right when we had that horrible recession thing in 2012. I was trying to find jobs, I had left from where I was living in college and moved back home, and just having a difficult time trying to survive and find my place. And I got a call and she said, hey, do you, and I was actively looking for a job too at the time. And she said, hey, do you want to come to California? It's nothing illegal, and you can make some extra money. A red flag should have went up when she said nothing illegal, but hey, I'm in survival mode. I'm in my early 20s, and I'm like, sure, this is somebody I went to school with. I wouldn't think that she would put me in any kind of harm's way. And went to California, and there was a guy there that she introduced me to, and hey, we have, we're just going to put some money in your bank account and you just take some money out, and then you can go on your way. So I didn't question it the way that I should have questioned it. If I, now looking back, right, I should have asked a lot of questions. But I didn't think I was doing anything illegal because I was going into a bank. It was my bank account. I wasn't scamming. I wasn't doing fraud. And, I thought the money was coming from him. I had no idea that it was a whole, well, as the government says, conspiracy of people that were put. So basically what the whole conspiracy was is that there were people in Florida people in California were shipping cannabis to people in Florida, which it was legal in California, illegal in Florida at the time. And I was one of hundreds of people that were used over their span of 3 years or 4 years. I can't remember of them doing that. And so once I had no idea about this. I had moved, I think when the government called me, when the IRS called me, I think it had been 2 years later. I didn't live in the same state. I had gotten married. I didn't know what they were talking about. So he called me and said, hey, We have this, we're investigating these people. And he said, we want to talk to you. Can you come and talk to us on a recorded line? And I'm like, and then he called my job too, mind you that. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm doing just working, living my life. They called my
Yeah.
job. And I was really, because I was like, am I in trouble? Like, what is this? Like, why is the IRS calling me? Like, that's to be determined. These people target people like you, and we want you to come down and bring any messages or email anything you have. And I had a new phone at the time. I had nothing. I had no communication with them anymore. When I was out there, that last day I was out there, something in me didn't feel right. Something just felt off. And so I was like, I'm not coming back out here anymore. I don't know what y'all have going on, but I'm done. Right. Wash my hands with it. And, so fast forward 2 years, then the IRS is saying to come speak to them. And I agreed at first. But because I saw how the system does us, because I lived it with my mother, I had no trust. And they gave me no time to get an attorney. It was literally like a Friday, and they were like, you need to come Monday. They wanted me to drive like 2 hours to meet them. It was just really weird. And I just didn't feel comfortable. And so when they called me on Monday and I said, hey, I'm not coming, I just don't feel comfortable. I would prefer to get an attorney. I heard them recording me while I was doing this call with them, that they didn't even tell me they were recording, but I heard the beeping sound in the background. And I said, I don't have anything to give y'all. I don't have emails and text messages. I don't have any of that. And it seems like you have the people that you want. So, I don't really know how much I can be of assistance. And I just don't feel comfortable coming to help. Coming to talk to you by myself. And so I think the IRS agent was on there. One of the DEA agents was on the call, and also the prosecutor of the case. And so they told me, well, you will see us again. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, you will see us again. And they got off the phone. About a month later, I was at work again. So they were intentionally trying to embarrass me because they had my address, and they pulled up and arrested me at my job, my place of employment, basically kidnapped me, because that's what it felt like. And then, that's when the whole court proceedings started. And then at that time, I don't think I was under indictment. I remember sitting in that holding cell, and they were bringing me, the court documents, and they didn't even know what they were doing. They were shuffling around. I was like, what am I being charged with? It took them 10 minutes to figure out what I was even being charged with. They questioned me. There was no recorder. They just were taking notes. And then they left. And then my journey in the system, the federal system, started, and I had to start reporting to probation and gearing up for to go to California. I had to fly to California to report there to the judge there. And that's kind of how it started. So once I got all of the evidence, because a lot of people have no idea, and so many women, that's why they sit a long time incarcerated. They have no idea how it works. I had no idea until I was fighting for my life. And I got all of the evidence. I went through everything, all that. They weren't even supposed to send me. They asked for it back, actually, after they sent it to me.
Wow.
It was a hot mess. And, I was facing one count originally. It was conspiracy to structure financial transactions. So what I learned in the process is that if you have, let's say you have $15,000 and you go put in $5,000 one day, and then next week you go put in another $5,000, that can be considered structuring financial transactions, because you're not putting the entire $15,000 into the bank. Most people have no idea about this. Wow. The average person doesn't know. It's usually people who are very, very, very wealthy, or people who work at the bank. Like, those are the folks who typically know these kind of IRS reporting laws, not just the population of people.
Right.
And so, when I looked at the evidence and I looked at the charge, and I said, you know what, I'm going to fight this. I think I can beat this. Like, I feel like they're just trying to make an example out of me because I didn't cooperate with them in the way that they would have liked me to. And so after I declined the plea deal is when they decided to trump up the charges and turn that one charge into 13 charges. And then like a month before trial. So I had no, like really no way to be like, oh, well, let me change my mind, or no, we're going to trial. You're facing over 100 years. We're going to take it to the fullest extent. And I was the only person on my case that went to trial. So that also enraged them because everybody else took a plea deal, but I refused.
Just take the deal so we can lock you up. Doesn't matter if it's true. Just take the deal.
Take the deal. And that's what I had a public defender. The first public defender I had was not sent from God. And I was going back and forth with him. He was trying to make me take the deal, and everybody's taking it. It's only 2 years. And this is how they talk to people. This is how they talk to people about their lives. And I always say God sent Jerome, and he was actually the second attorney that was on my case when we were going to get ready for trial. And the other attorney just mysteriously dropped off. I don't know where he went, but Jerome became my main attorney. And like I said, we didn't win at trial, but he took it. Yeah, he won appeal. I mean, I like to believe my case helped his career because he's now a judge.
Yeah. Wow. Well, but you never hear that. Like that a public defender, one, is good. Secondly, they have a heart. Third, they even know the case. Right. And that they're willing to stick with you. That's a amazing story because you don't hear that.
Yeah.
No, not for a public defender. Mm-hmm. I mean, looking back, what part of your identity did you fight the hardest to hold on to during those years?
I would say, just my dignity, like my dignity as a woman, as a human was just everything in even from the intake, from the interaction with law enforcement to the intake, to the court, to the jail, to prison, that process is so inhumane. And especially for women, there were times when I had one of the facilities I was in, mind you, I was in 5 different facilities before I got to the prison. Gave us 2 pairs of disposable underwear a week.
What?
Yeah, they'd be so overcrowded. We'd be sleeping on the floor or sleeping on cots on the floor, or you taking a shower and there's mold all over the bathroom, or some of them don't even have stalls for the restroom. So you're sitting on a toilet with 10 other people in a line, and that's how you have to use the restroom. Not to mention, being on your menstrual cycle and not being able to access pads or tampons because you don't have money on commissary to purchase them, and they give you, 8 for a cell, or a small box for a cell of 15 to 20 women, one of the bigger units that have 15 to 20 women. It's just holding on to,
my God,
your humanity in these situations is really, really hard to do. And that's what I was fighting for every single day. Even once you get to prison, when you have visits, you get strip searched. I got strip searched all the time for no reason. And these guards, they're a lot of them are miserable themselves. And, I always look at it as they're incarcerated too, because you got to come here to work every single day. Mm-hmm. And they're overworked, underpaid. They don't have enough staff to support the population of incarcerated people. Yeah. And just being talked to like inmate this and inmate that, and, being yelled at or cursed at, or, I've had a guard threaten that they could take away my family visits because I didn't do something that they liked, or just really that dignity, I think, was the hardest thing for me because it's soul crushing, and a lot of these women are so intelligent, such light, such big hearts, love their kids, whether they got caught up with whatever man they were with or caught up. I saw grandmothers, I mean, elderly women that were there because they answered a phone call and their son was being investigated. And so they get caught up. And that's why with my documentary, I'm exposing that conspiracy law, because the federal government uses conspiracy laws to entrap all the time. They might have one or two or three people that they really know. These are the kingpin. This is the one we're after. This is who we're going to lock up all and put all of these people. Some of the women had 100 people on their indictment. They don't know people. You have co-defendants that you've never met. I had co-defendants. I think there was 8 people on my case. I knew one of them. All of the other co-defendants I'd never met before. And they're using their testimony and what they're saying in court against me. And I'd never met these people in my life. And so the federal government they have endless amounts of money to do whatever they need to do to get a conviction. And that is what they will do, especially if they're trying to make you an example. And so, I feel like that experience, although I would have never wanted to go there, God allowed me to see that and witness that and go through that because of, what I witnessed from my mother. She didn't have a voice, in the 90s.
Yeah.
We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have a way, all of these so-called, organizations that come in and help and are supposed to fight for your rights. They didn't give a damn about my mom. They didn't care about this Black woman who got beat by a cop. So that's why she took the deal. So I feel like I was able to give voice to that. I knew once I was going to, I said, when I get out of this, I'm going to use my voice to elevate the stories, because people need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
People need to understand that just because a woman is incarcerated doesn't mean she's a horrible person. It doesn't mean, a lot of us are domestic violence survivors. I've seen women who fought back and they ended up going to prison, or ended up fighting back, killing their abuser, and they end up in prison. I've seen, one of the women in my feature documentary, Black Butterflies, she was 23. Her boyfriend was selling drugs. She was 23 years old. A lot of young Black women, date drug dealers and think, hey, I'm not touching it. I don't see it, so it's not going to touch me. They gave her more time than him. They sentenced her to 45 years. She ended up getting, by the grace of God, getting clemency from, of all people, Trump in 2020, and was released from prison. But her sentence was 45 years, and she did, I think, 11 or 13. I don't even want to knock off the time that she did, but she did over a decade of time, because her boyfriend was selling drugs. So these are the things that those kind of stories are what people need to see. It's the humanizing of it, because that's the biggest thing for us as women, is holding on to that dignity.
Yeah.
When you've been sitting in solitary confinement for 4, 5, 6 days, solitary confinement should be outlawed. It's not anything that any human being should be in. And then you're putting pregnant women in solitary confinement, because you're keeping them away from the general population, because you think that it makes it safe, but it doesn't make it safe. You're harming the mother and the child. And then these systems are not designed. They don't have health care. I saw women who their extra meal was a peanut butter jelly sandwich and a thing of milk. That was their extra meal, and they were big and pregnant. And then if you have no support, thank God I had family support. My dad came to see me all the time. I had, money on my books, what I budgeted, I wasn't balling out, but I made it work. But majority of women don't have that. And then a lot of times, you look at these visitation rooms for men lined up, grandmother, mama, baby mama, wife, everybody is coming to see them. Women, it's crickets. You might have a few folks that come in and bring their kids every now and again, but they're also putting the families, they're making it harder for families who don't have money, because they're they're shipping women all across the state. Like one, I might be from Texas, but I'm locked up in Connecticut, or I'm over here in Alabama. And so it's hard for caretakers to be able to bring their children to see their mom. And then in the visiting rooms, how do I tell my 4-year-old child that you can't come with mommy, that you got to go? Mommy has to go. You can't see me.
Yeah.
So, I'll see you at the next visit, or I'll see you on I'll talk to you on the 15-minute video call that not all prisons or jails have. And then you're limited to how many minutes you have on your phone every month. Like I only have 300 minutes. How do I raise my child? How do I talk to my child about their day? And you know what I mean? So it's all of these things that I feel like is the dignity of trying to hold on to that dignity.
It seems like that's the goal of the system, to one, dehumanize you
Mm-hmm.
and to make you look like you are such this threat to society. You're this horrible person that deserves no good. You have no good in you, which is, clearly the other way around here. And they want to make other people feel this way because perhaps not to see it, not to, if it happens to them, to not, be aware. Why do you think they need to dehumanize people so much?
I don't know. I mean, if I always look at the history, it's historical. This country has always dehumanized people of color, like whether they're Native or, Black people, African people, Asian people. If you look at the history of this country, that is just what it's been. I think, one of my favorite films from Ava DuVernay, 13th, it talks a lot about that history and how once that, that 13th Amendment was put in place, they were able to say, slavery is illegal except for, if you've committed a crime. So that allows
involuntary servitude.
Right. And that is legal slavery. It's not, slavery is still not, it's not gone. It's still here. It's every day in these prisons and jails across the country where people are working as slaves for free. I know for a fact in the state of Texas, they do not pay them to work. I was grateful. I was in the feds because I got paid $50 a month and worked every day of the week. So, and I got $50. I was making cents on the hour working for a company called Unicor, where all of these major, like there's coffee, all of these major companies that benefit off of prison labor. And so, again, this administration privatized prisons and, it's slave labor. A lot of these companies are using it because it's cheap. It's basically free. And they're making millions of dollars, and people don't even know. If we're so bad, if incarcerated people are so bad, well, sometimes you might be on the phone with one because they have a phone call company that calls and does this. Yeah, I worked where I was on the computer and was different products. Merchandising and stuff visually on the computer. Yeah. Also, they make underwear for some of these big companies. They make license plates. They make all kind of things are being made behind these prison walls, and people have no idea that they're buying stuff that's made from incarcerated people. I don't know if they knew if it would make them stop buying it or not, but we can't be that all be bad if we're doing something, right?
So interesting. I was telling my mom this because we look at some people who do such horrible crimes, they don't get incarcerated. And and I'm just going to keep it on Black because we know that's the biggest issue. And then other people who have done literally nothing to maybe the most minimal crime that they get the most time. And I said to her, I think they are looking at a standard that person who clearly is nuts, we can't get them to do much of anything. So let's not incarcerate them. Let's leave them out there. But the ones that have, they have some health, they have some smarts, we can get them to work. So that's the one we need in the system. So that's the one that we're going to focus on. And for you saying that, it makes me think now, oh my gosh, this is just me observing. It's not me having any prior knowledge. And now that you say this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I was onto something, or I'm right, because how can someone who's literally nuts not go to prison, who has done the most horrible crime, and somebody else? What are you looking at the standard to say, okay, this one, put them in there because you want people to work? Is it really about locking criminals up, or is it really finding something to lock somebody up for that is going to fit the standard that you need to put them in involuntary servitude?
Yeah, look at this. If you look back in history at the slave trade, when they had us up on the docks and they were, bidding, how they looked at us like cattle. So it hasn't changed. It's just I always say, it just changed uniforms. It hasn't changed. Slavery is still existent and it's live and well. And now with the whole
ICE.
immigration and ICE, it's only gotten worse. It's getting worse, and will continue to get worse because now they're targeting they're really targeting anybody at this point,
Oh
and
my
people are
gosh.
really scared. And I don't even know, I always say there's so much going on in the world. It's hard to be in all the fights, but
Right.
I'm an empath, so I see and feel it all.
Yes.
But what's going on right now, is just so devastating.
It is. How do people keep themselves safe?
It's hard. God, you better Psalms 91 because I honestly don't know. It's one of those things. I have a lot of PTSD
I'm
from
sure.
what I've witnessed and, been in therapy, and, my me telling stories is also healing for me as well. But I still, feel like sometimes if I hear keys jingle too loud, or if something slams loud, or I don't like standing in lines because I had to stand in line to take a shower, to wash my clothes, to do all these things. So I honestly don't know. I wish I had the answer to tell you how to be safe, or even tell my children how to be safe, but it's really, really hard to explain. You just have to try to do your best, and teach your kids how to, especially Black kids, how to interact with cops. You look at my mom, she's educated. She doesn't come from, the hood or whatever, these societal, the stigma that they put on Black people. She didn't fit into that box. She, talks very well. She has a master's degree. She still ended up going to prison. So it's really hard to say, how to keep each other safe. To me, it's one of those things. It's a collective fight. Like, we have to get
Yeah.
together. We have to collectively, work as like the Black Panthers did, as our ancestors did, to come together and make sure everybody is fed. And because a lot of things are poverty, petty crimes. I don't know if you heard about the little boy, the 1-month-old baby that was shot by the cop
Yes. Mhm.
over diapers that I don't even think they proved that she stole.
She had a receipt.
Yeah, there you go. So
We got
Unbelievable.
we're over. We have to wrap it.
okay.
Okay. I could honestly just listen to you all day because it's such profound and necessary information that people need to hear, these experiences. Please tell us your movies that are coming out, when they're coming out, your documentary. Take your time. Please let us know.
So, Born Captive will officially be done at the end of this month, but we are going to go in a festival run. So, we're hoping that it will premiere, God says the same, as Sundance in January. And then we'll, distribute it out after that. And you can find out, stay involved, go to borncaptive.org, and stay up to date. And also follow me on socials at The Real Starling. And then Black Butterflies, we are still currently in production, so we're hoping to wrap production by the end of the year, or by the end of next year. We're still actively fundraising, and so you can go to blackbutterfliesdoc.com, blackbutterfliesdoc.com, and get involved with the movement, donate to the film, just kind of get up to date on what's going on, and sign up for our newsletter there. We'll keep you updated, but that will also go into the festival circuit, and then we'll release it. I will be having Born Captive screenings coming up, so I can definitely keep you updated on those. I know in October we're doing one in Alabama, so yeah, and these are more community based screenings, because obviously it's great to have this film with Naturi, but also there is impact that comes along with the project.
Right.
That's the biggest thing for me with that project.
Absolutely. Well, glory to God. I mean, hearing your story, the strength, and like you said, it was from God, because like you decided to take control of a narrative and use what was meant to destroy you to inspire others. And I'm grateful for your message, because it's clear that no matter what happens, we still have a choice about the next chapter. Thank you for reminding us of that, Starling. I am so grateful to have had you on the show today. Thank you for taking the time, not just for sharing your story, but for sharing your perspective. You know, it just wasn't simply a conversation about injustice. Especially as heated as things are now, it's a conversation about identity, humanity, truth, healing, and the courage to reclaim your voice when the world thinks it already knows your story and has decided it's going to write you off. And thank God that didn't happen to you. And to everyone watching or listening, I hope you leave with this thought. Your life is bigger than the hardest chapter. Do not allow one mistake, one disappointment, one season of pain, or someone else's opinion to become the title of your story. You still have pages left to write. If today's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or gave you a new perspective, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Join the conversation in the comments, subscribe, and be a part of our PlanetRoq community. Wow. You can catch every episode on YouTube at Raquel Herring and listen wherever you enjoy podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Starling, thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here and telling a story. I didn't have to say much. And until the next time, you all keep asking better questions. Do not let this world steal the truth from you, because that's what it's trying to do. Keep choosing the truth over assumptions. Keep writing a story that reflects your purpose. I'm Raquel Herring, and this is PlanetRoq.
What an awesome show full of insight and inspiration. Thank you to our guests and listeners. Look forward to hearing us next week on envision-radio.com at 12 noon, right here on PlanetRoq.